Welcome everybody, Shir number 972. We're learning today Lila Nishmas Moshe Dov Ben Rabar and Zizel, Lila Nishmas Blima Basra Moshe, and Refuah Shalem Yehuda Arya Leib Ben Hinda, Shetakaver Refuah Shalem B'Sech Shachol Yisrael. Getting back to our malacha of MEMACHAIK. Okay, so MEMACHAIK, MEMAREACH, we've spoken about in the past. MEMAREACH is the tilde of MEMACHAIK, but the bottom line is, I want to just talk about something which is not too common, but does come up sometimes, and that is the Indian of sunscreen. Sunscreen, a little brought down in some of the Sfarim, Sefer Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS, and the Sefer Learning Shabbos in 3 minutes brings it down. B'Shem, the Sefer Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS. So Lemaisi brings down on page, does the Sefer of Learning Shabbos in 3 minutes on page 389, that Mimareach, like we've mentioned in the past, applies to anything that is at least somewhat thick or semi-dense. It does not apply to something that is viscous or easily pourable. Okay, we've spoken about that in our last year, especially when we spoke about the various different type of lotions. So the question is, when it comes to sunscreen, sometimes people need sunscreen. There's certain people that need, they have more delicate skin. They're going outside, possibly where the sun is a little bit stronger, possibly in the summertime, or even in places whereby it's not the summertime, but it's a stronger sun, and they have to put on the sunscreen. And so the question is, could one put on the sunscreen? So the bottom line is, it basically the halachas are the same. It depends how thick this sunscreen would be. So just to read the lashon from the Sefer Learning Shabbos in 3 minutes, he says like this on page 390: one may not shmir. He brings it down, by the way, again from the Sefer Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS, that one may not smear thick or semi-thick sunscreen or lotion into the skin to prevent sunburns. Okay, so that's it depends if it's thick or semi-thick, which we've spoken about how to go about judging that. However, one may use sunscreen in a liquid form. So obviously, you do have sunscreens that come in a liquid form that are, like we've spoken about, they're pourable, they pour, they flow very freely, a lot of them, and such a sunscreen would be allowed to be used if somebody needs it, if they're going outside, and so on. So he continues on and just explains what is this all about, because we know, and we have to talk about the halachas of refuah. We know that a refuah, if somebody does something for refuah, you can apply some sort of cream or medication or something, even if it's allowed to be done on Shabbos. But when it comes to if it's going to be for refuah, in many cases it's problematic. I mean, unless a person is chayla she'ein bei sakana, which we're not going to get into all those halachas now. It's a whole big subject. But he brings down, although taking medicine is forbidden on Shabbos, right? Just in general, if it's stama mechesh, somebody just has a little bit of an annoyance and so on. So then taking medicine on Shabbos is taka also, but preventing, we're going to learn when we talk about refuah, preventing ailments is permitted. According to many poskim anyways, preventing ailments is taka allowed. He brings this actually from the Chazon Ish, taka, who mentions it, that preventing ailments is allowed. In other words, when I take this certain thing that I'm taking, or the suntan lotion, or whatever the case is the person's putting on, they're not having any refuah by putting it on. They're just preventing themselves from getting burned, or they're preventing themselves from having some issue come up. So that is okay. Again, as long as it's a pourable thing, like we've spoken about, whether it's in general a lotion type style whereby it pours and it flows, and you pick up your hand and it just flows straight down. Now we do have to mention, we always mention, Lefi Rav Moshe was a little bit more machmir. It has to be flowing very, very fluidly. But for sure, according to the Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS, Reb Shlomo Zalman and Reb Elyashiv, but according to them, it would be no problem. So he brings down further. What about while we're on the subject, what about the Indian of sun tanning? One wants to suntan, right? It's a nice day. I want a sun. I'll lay in the sun. Am I allowed to lay in the sun? I enjoy laying in the sun. Some people like it. They like to lie in the sun. So there's two types of lying in the sun. One could lie in the sun and I enjoy it. What'll happen to my body? My skin will get tanned, whatever. It doesn't make a difference to me one way or the other. I just enjoy laying in the hot sun. Some people enjoy it. Then there's another type of suntan where people are bedafka, they lie in the sun because they bedafka want to have a nice tan. And then there's a type of a suntan lotion, which is, even though it flows and it could be possibly even like almost flowing like water, but they smear it on because of the fact that it makes the tan go better. makes like a better type of a tan. So that's taka problematic. So lemaisa, as far the only type of sun tanning, if it's for enjoyment, brings down the Sefer Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS mutter lishkav ba'or hashemish l'shem tainig. If it's just for tainig, this is what I enjoy, to lay in the sun. So that would be fine. So he brings this down. That's the Shmir Shabbos Kehilchas brings it down. The Sefer learning learning Shabbos in 3 minutes brings it down. Lamaisa, one is allowed to lie in the sun for enjoyment, even though by doing so he's going to get a tan, right? You laying the good. I enjoy laying in the sun, but I'll get a tan either way. That will be okay because this whole kavanah has nothing to do with the tan. He couldn't care less about the tan. But the bottom line is, again, in conjunction with the Shmir Shabbos Kehilchas, but one may not use even liquid suntan lotion, right? Liquid suntan lotion, there's no problem of memarech, but one may not use even liquid suntan lotion in order to get a tan on Shabbos, right? I'll smear it on, I'll make my tan better. That you can't do. And if some also he brings down the Sefer Shmir Shabbos Kehilchas further. Actually, he brings it down from the Sefer Shalos Shuvas Az Nizberu, Shalos Shuvas Minchas Yitzchak. He says lemaisa, if somebody's kavana, good to lay there, I enjoy, fine, that we understand, no problem. But if his kavana is b'shchiva ba'or hashemish, he litzarech refuah. If he's taka doing it for a refuah, now we're talking about a simple whatever cases ailment. We're not going to get into all those halachas right now. It's not something that cholesh sheyesh by sakana, even she'ein by sakana. There's some sort of refuah, like chizuk haguf, to strengthening his body and so on. Then asa b'chalinian, then one is not allowed to do it at all. It's only the only time laying in the sun is allowed. Brings down again Sefer Shmir Shabbos Kehilchas. Wait, this could be found in Perek Yud Dalid, in the new Shmir Shabbos Kehilchas in Sif Katan Mem Dalid. Again, Perek Yud Dalid, Sif Katan Mem Dalid. That's how he brings it down. It's only if a person does it strictly for enjoyment, but if you're doing it for other reasons, I want to bedafka get a tan, and especially smearing it on my body to get a tan, the lotion that you can't do, and even for refuah and even for chizuk haguf, he brings on that one is not allowed to do when it comes to the sun. Now, as far as if somebody has a sunburn, Rahman al-Islam, so the question is, how to treat that. So that's already a little bit more complicated. Lamaisa, in general, when you're dealing with refuah, the person has to be chola she'ein by sakana. Now, chola sheyesh by sakana, where sakana we've spoken about many times. Of course, everything goes. That's not even the question. We're talking about a chola sheyesh by she'ein by sakana. He's not a sakana. Elamai what? His whole body aches. Something whereby it's a very bad sunburn or something like that. But again, we're not going to get into all these halachas right now. But definitely, it's a very light type of a sunburn. One has to be careful, else refuah, even with lotions, it's running into a problem. But if they feel it's a question, in those cases, one should ask and find out what has to be done. So it's just a quote from the Sefer Learning Shabbos again in 3 minutes. Treating sunburn is usher unless one's entire body is aching. But again, that's very open for discussion. If you want to call it, one has to know how bad, what, when, and where. Obviously, if it is a sakana, you don't ask. We've spoken about that in the past. Also, chas v'shalom, somebody, something happens whereby it's a sakana or a suffix sakana, or even a question of a dangerous situation. Dangerous situations, or even a question of dangerous situations, you don't ask. The Shulchan Aruch says you do whatever has to be done, and everybody does whatever has to be done to save the person. So that's not even open for discussion. But the question is, if somebody has the sunburn, how to treat it, what, when, and where. And it's not so bad. If they feel it's a problem, they should somebody should try and find out. Obviously, talking to a Rav Paisik, and in conjunction with their own situation, what has to be done. Thank you for listening. Atzlach and bracha kol tov.